It's funny. Okay, here we go. Now I'll show you guys. So here's the deal. So Zaza wants to know with focus, when you're using a static front page, which is how I recommend everybody run their sites these days. If you're using a static front page, you can have the headline area display with the headline and also with a byline, or you can have it not display at all. And so we can dive in and actually look at that, see the controls here. So we go to the content and display page, to pages and posts, to pages, to front page, and we can choose to have the headline and byline, headline only, or no headline or byline. So we're going to say nothing. And we're going to refresh and it's gone. Okay, so the front page template, which is what we're looking at here, you can actually see in the lower left-hand corner, it indicates what template is running on this page. The front page template is built with this specific functionality to be able to remove the title and the byline, the headline and the byline. Other templates are not built that way, but let's say you want to do this. Now, Zaza, can you clarify, did you want to do that on every single page or post or just on like one?
No, I want to delete on all pages.
Okay, why do you want to delete the titles on all pages?
I have only 4. I can do it by one. It's not a problem.
Well, that's not the question. The question is, you are removing extremely critical SEO information and also extremely critical information for any visitors by removing the title. So I would never recommend this. Like if it's your homepage, you've got this stuff up here in the header saying, this is, this is my business, this is my site, this is what we do. You've got enough contextual information. But if you remove that on other pages, then how the heck is anybody going to know what they're looking at?
I can write it by myself again.
But yes, but then it wouldn't be wrapped in the HTML tags that tell a machine like search engine, hey, this is what's important versus this is just some text that, some user is going to realize is important because of the way you formatted it or something like this. There's a lot to that. And there's also some hidden tags on pages that go along with your title and things like that. I will show one here. We've got these things. This is called structural HTML data. It's not stuff you see when you view a web page, but it is in there and it tells search engines a little bit more about your pages. And so when we remove some of these critical elements, you might be removing some of that metadata as well, and that's a bad idea. Now I have a good tutorial to show you how to remove the title and byline on a single page, or like you creating a custom template to do it, and then you might deploy this on a one-off basis. I would never recommend you modify the page template or the post template to remove that from either of those two entities. The only context I can think of where this would be a reasonable thing to do is if you're running a very small site, 3-4 pages total, and you have a very clear display thing that you're doing. And so like, a title's really not going to matter. So in that case, I would make an exception, but otherwise I would say absolutely don't do this on all posts or pages. That doesn't make sense. So I will go ahead and illustrate the way that I would do it with a custom template, and we can see if that looks like that'll work for you. I think it will. All right, got to move this real quick. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pop into the skin editor, and this is a cool little trick you can use anytime. So like with this front page, we know that we have basically the outcome we want over here, but on a page template, like we'll go over here, we are seeing our headline and byline. We maybe don't want that. So we start with the thing that does what we want, which would be, we start with something that's really close to what we want to achieve. And then we are going to just remove the few elements that we don't want. And that's how we'll arrive at the solution. In this case, I say the best way to do it is actually just to we're going to add a new custom template, and we'll call it no headline. And so when you add a new template, the template is blank. And so here's what I was saying, where we want to choose something that is really close to the outcome we want. Now I showed you the front page template. In this case, we're actually going to choose a page template. And so we're going to copy from page template. We're going to copy from the existing page template to fill out this new template we just created. So we will copy from template. We'll say, okay. Now this template is just like the page template. It's identical. Obviously, there'd be no point in having a template that's identical to the page template. So what we're going to do is just remove, we don't want a headline area. Oops. So we're just going to remove this entire headline area box. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to drag it up here to the top section. If you drag it down here, it will remove that box from all templates. That is a big no-no. We never want to do that. You probably don't want to do that. So I'm going to drag it up here. It disappears. If you want to verify that it's there, you can click on this little drop-down menu, and the boxes you just dropped in here will appear at the very bottom, underneath the stuff with the asterisks. Okay, so there we verify it's there. I'm just going to save the template. So I have removed that information. I'm going to save the template. Template is saved. Okay, that was step one. So we made this new template with that stuff removed. I'm going to go back over here to the page where I would like this stuff removed. I'm going to edit it. And down here where there's I can select a custom template, I'm going to select the template we just created called no headline. And then I'm just going to save it or update the page. Let's take a look. And now you can see that the headline and byline have been removed from this page. So that's a very, that's the shortest route to achieving this. One thing you also notice though, is that the text is really wide. This is not what we wanted, really. It's a little bit different than it used to be. We'd rather it be constrained to that width. The reason it's like this is because when you create a custom template and you're running in focus mode, you actually have to add one more little thing to tell the system to do the right thing. So we're going to go back into the skin editor here on our no headline template. Going to click this little gear. We're going to add something called a template body class, and we just want it to say focus. That's all we got to do. So I'm going to click this X now. I'm going to save the template. We'll go look at it again. Hold shift, click refresh. Boom, there it is. Now it's all working the way it's supposed to. So we have it. Everything looks right, and the stuff we wanted to remove is now gone. Whenever we're doing something like this, so Zaza's question was he wanted to remove the title and tagline, or the headline and byline from a particular template. And whenever you take actions like this, you always want to think in terms of, oh, are the actions I'm going to take only going to affect like this page only? Or will the actions I take affect other things? Maybe things we don't want to affect. So we always want to avoid taking actions that are going to change, cause unintended consequences to other things we don't want to change. Focus is generally set up so that you won't run into those problems, especially if you follow my advice. Especially if you follow my advice. So I can help you avoid those unintended consequences. And then the other thing to do is we always want to make sure we're choosing the action that requires the least amount of moving parts. We want to change the fewest possible number of things to create any outcomes that are different from the standard stuff. And so what I mean by standard stuff outcomes, I mean, if you go into WordPress and you do all your content creation from, inside the editor, I've got all my freaking bars, admin bars removed right now, so I can't easily go in and edit a page, but here we go. You go into any page. If you're just doing all your stuff in here and, selecting options in here and selecting options in the focus options and all that and saving them and doing that, you will always be operating within these guardrails I've set up. You will not have these unintended consequences. You are not doing anything that I call a snowflake action or an idiosyncratic customization touch point. This is some unique thing that you only do here. And if you ever change your site in the future, you will have to come back and address this one little thing that you did here. That's a very inefficient thing to do, so we always try to avoid that. But what Zaza has asked for is, in fact, an idiosyncratic customization touch point. And so the method I showed you to create that new template, to remove the item he doesn't want, and then to deploy the custom template on this particular page, that quarantines this idiosyncratic action to only this page. And so this is the way we would want to handle something like this type of modification. But I also advise, and I do this with my own sites. Every time I go through and change something, I'm trying to see if I can only use built-in focus features without involving any idiosyncratic stuff, such as custom CSS for my design to do something a little different. I'd prefer to avoid that if I could. Stuff like this, modifying templates or deploying custom templates, I want to avoid that if I can. Just anything like that. I don't want to do anything snowflakey ever. I just want to be having this toolkit of really beautiful styles that I can apply to create the kinds of pages I want to create. So I'm always using the stuff I already have and not introducing anything new or anything different in just this context. And that's really the secret sauce of focus. If you really understand this, you can be a great operator in any environment, and you will not be shooting yourself in the foot. You'll not be creating these technical debt problems that you have to address later. This is really the way you can run your website over time and retain your sanity. All right. Okay. So Zaza, I hope that answers your question, or at least gives you some clarity for how you might want to do this. And if it doesn't, please let me know.
No, I'm not sure I want to change it now after what you said, but if I will, I know how.
Yes. I mean, I encourage you, like, if you feel like one page is going to be better, definitely do the method I showed you. It's just, I really want you to think about, okay, well, I'm doing all these snowflake actions. Maybe I don't want to do that. Is there another way for me to do this that is simpler and easier to manage? These are the questions you want to ask yourself. All right, I'm gonna pop back over here. See my beautiful face again. Let's see. We welcome Seventh Scroll in here. Good to see you, buddy. And let's see. Is anyone else? Who's next? Who has a question? And if you're muted, you just want to unmute and then speak up, but I'll hear you. If not, I'm going to talk about something I did. I'll tell you what, I'll share my screen. I'm going to show what I've been working on recently, and share my thoughts. And if you guys have questions as we go along here, feel free to interrupt and ask me. That's totally fine. Okay. So I'm going to show you this. So I just redid the focus sales page on DIYthemes.com, and also kind of redid the homepage a little bit. And so this goes along with exactly what we just talked about with Zaza. Is the previous focus sales page had quite a few elements that were not just focus content elements. They required me to go in and like do some maintenance over time, and every time I'd make a little adjustment, I'd have to be really careful. And it's just really no way to live. And in addition, the page wasn't working very well, it wasn't selling very well. And this is what I've really been focused on the last like 45 days or so. And that is figuring out a way to present my pages so that people will actually pay attention. People will actually consume some of the content and go down the page. They don't just like get here at the top and leave. And I want, I want my pages to accomplish their goals more effectively, more efficiently. So like in this case, I want to sell more focus. I want people to understand why they're buying it. And so I redid the focus sales page. The specific things I did that I think are good takeaways for you guys is I made sure that the copy, the content is really focused on the visitor, on the user, on the person who is going to be buying the product. Okay. So like speaking about it in terms of their problems, the whole page, everything on the page, all the way everything is phrased, it speaks to the problems the visitor is currently experiencing. It's their journey. It's not about focus. It's not about me. It's not about what I want for them. It's about their journey, where they are, and how they can get out of the mess they're in. What is the solution to their problems? Is there something that can provide relief? So I've got this top section. So this is known as the, there's like in copywriting, there's ways to create pages, like a 5-step sequence, like introduce the problem, introduce the solution, show something to the customer, relate that back to the customer's experience, and then, close the deal, ask for the sale, this kind of thing. There's various, ways you can implement this, but this is the basic thing. So this top section here, I introduced the problem. I did create this one unique design element because I think this really helps illustrate what's going on. And frankly, like setting up this page, it was hard. It took me a couple of days to figure out, like, how can I present somebody's problems, speak about somebody's problems, and try to be relatable, but in a very small area of space. Okay, like I could explain your problem over 600 words and 18 paragraphs or something like that, but I'm not sure everybody's going to read that or pay attention. So this little, here's what you thought was going to happen on the left, here's what actually happened on the right. I think this is a pretty good way to show myth versus reality, which is the way I've phrased it here. So anyway, I've introduced the problem. And then in this next section, I use a full width layout bleed. This is a focus feature that's built in. I have at least 2 really good videos. I could link you guys if you want to know how to use bleeds effectively. I don't know if you guys have watched my how to create a persuasive sales page video, how to create a persuasive sales page with focus, but I talk about making bleeds and I show how to do it. So that is an incredible video. I will drop a link to that in the chat in just a moment, but that's probably the best video I've ever made in terms of learning how to use focus and to do cool stuff. So I put this full width bleed section in. I like when you go from one section to another, when we're changing pace a little bit, to have a full color difference on the background. This is a really good way to engage the visitor again. You've already got them at the top, they're reading. You start scrolling down though, people kind of start getting numb. So you want to introduce visual changes, subtle ones, nothing crazy, to keep them interested. So that, like by the time you get here, your focus is sort of renewed. You're like, oh, a new section. You're reading the headline again. You're getting into the copy, and you keep doing this as you go down the page. So you want to refresh the visitor's attention as they go down a big page. That's an important thing to do. Let's see, we've got another question here. I'll come back to that in a moment. So anyway, moving on, I also put a buy now button in here. So real quick, as we go down this, I'm going to show you the elements that I'm using from Focus Content Styles. And Focus Content Styles are the things we can access from this dropdown inside the WordPress editor. We've got all these things. There's at least 13 different content elements you can create and deploy on your pages using this simple menu, which is the easiest way to do it by far. So we're going back here. So what we've got here, the first thing we've got is, this is called an extension. So when the content is wider, when we've got a little bit of content that's wider than the main content column of content, that's known as an extension. So how this works is your main content column is a certain amount of pixels wide, and default focus is 644 pixels, but this little section down here that's extended can go as wide as the usable width of the layout, which is defined in a focus installation as 1040 pixels wide. I will show you what that looks like. That's this blue box. It's 1040 pixels wide. So when we're within our content and we use an extension, we give ourselves additional width up to that total usable layout width instead of just our content column. Really cool little visual interruption in this section of the page. So this is a great thing to use. Extensions are your friend. They're really cool. There's a million different ways you can use them. I'll show you a couple other ways I use it on this page in a moment. Extensions are great. So that's one content style, extensions. Number 2, we've got bleeds. Bleeds aren't technically a focus content style. I'm trying to get the, I haven't been able to build it yet so it works inside that menu. That may be coming in a future version of Focus, but bleeds are easy to use as well. And so I've got a bleed here, and then I've got a button. This is a save button technically, but this is sending you over to the Focus pricing page. So we've got 2 elements there. In this next section, we've got just a simple subheadline. We've got a drop cap. The drop cap is a Focus content style, super easy to use. All we do is highlight this letter, select drop cap right here, and boom, easily create a drop cap. That's no problem at all. So there's 3 focus content styles. Right here, we've got an image, and this image has the shadow behind it. If I just put this image in my content, here's what it would look like without that shadow. Doesn't look, it's kind of funky, right? It doesn't really, an image with a white background is not going to be distinguishable from the rest of a page that you put it on if the page has a white background too. And then you end up with these weird sort of like, I call them visual hangers. It's like sitting out here in space, kind of makes you uncomfortable. Doesn't look too good. Whenever I have something like that, or whenever I have an element that I want to draw some extra attention to, I will add what's called a pop style. And the pop style also available from Focus Content Styles. There it is. I add this pop style to make it stand out off the page. And so I'm going to add that back in. And there's the pop. Looks way better, right? Really catches your eye. And it also sets it apart from the content and makes it like there's no visual confusion anymore with this. This is nice. So the pop is cool. So that's our fourth Focus Content style I've already used on the page. And actually there's a fifth one, centering. I've centered this button. So fifth, centering. You might say, well, why the heck would I need centering? I've already got that over here with WordPress. You shouldn't use these WordPress alignment tools. They commit a web standard sin known as inline CSS styling. Don't use it. The only thing you should ever use is the center text function under Focus Content Styles right here. So you can forget these exist. Just use the center text for Focus Content Styles instead. So I've used that also. So that's 5. And now here we've got another new box. This is known as an alert callout. So the 6th Focus Content style I've used on this page. This is a great thing to do to draw attention to anything. I've popped it as well. You'll notice the shadow behind it. This is an alert that's been popped. Here's what it would look like not popped. Still good, but you know, when I really want to get somebody's attention, I want you to read something, I'll pop it too. I want to make sure you see it. So we got another button in there. I've got another bleed, another drop cap. So here's a cool one. So I have a little list of some items here. I'm talking about some stuff you get with Focus, and I've included testimonials, which are quotes. I've included some testimonials here, and I also used a new Focus feature called flexible captions to give attribution to these quotes. So it's super easy to do this. So we'll say this is a quote. We'll turn it in this. I'm just illustrating how to do this. All right. So I'm going to turn this little thing into a quote. We'll say, hey, this thing's now a block quote. And this is the caption for the block quote. But this is, I'm going to have to change. The editor's a little janky. It's not my favorite. Turn that back into paragraph. Well, now we're going to choose to make this a caption. If you make the text that immediately follows a quote, if you turn that into a caption, Focus is smart and it's going to say, hey, I think you probably want this to be the citation for that quote. And so that's what we'll do. This is the caption for the block quote. We're going to update it and we will go look at this page. And now this little quote, you see, has a citation because Focus knows what to do. So I did that here for these quotes, for these testimonials. I thought that was a pretty clever and handy way of doing it. Also, it's worth noting, so these quotes appear within a Focus bleed, a full width bleed. The bleeds are all configured so that when you use the 18 colors of bleeds that come with Focus, anything like a block quote, a citation, a caption, any text that appears out here in what's called the bar, all those things are going to be color coordinated to automatically work within the context of your bleed. So you're going to have this little design boost, this little enhancement for free. You won't have had to think about it. It's already going to look a little bit better. So again, this is ways to use these Focus content styles. And when you use them, there's other little smart adjustments, and you're going to end up with these rich pages with cool little design tweaks. And you won't have really had to consider these finer point details of any of it. You just know what you want to do. Focus kind of fills in the little stuff to make it look pretty for you in the end. So I thought that was cool using these testimonials, but using the flexible captions and the basic block quotes to make that happen. That was real handy. You know, on my previous sales page, I had done some custom CSS styles to make this stuff happen. This time I got to delete all those and just use the stuff in Focus. That always feels good when I can get rid of my custom environment and just use the basic environment. I know I'm operating in a simpler way. I know I'm going to have less stuff to maintain. And I know that if anything ever looks off, it's going to be really easy to troubleshoot if I'm operating in this way. And let's see. So we've got another button down here. Here we go. This is great. I've added, this is bar content. So you can, if you want to put stuff out in the bar, I'll show you what the bar, well, the bar is the dead space on either side of the content column. So here's our content column, but we've got usable width that extends out to the left and right of this blue column. We might want to put some stuff in there to use it, and having a footnote or something out in the side in the bar is something we might want to do from time to time. Indeed, I do that here. And so any text you want to turn into a bar is very simple. You just go in, you highlight the text, you select bar, and boom, it's now bar. It gets the color change inside the editor here just to let you know something's different about it. But the bar won't actually appear until you look at your page on a big enough device. And here it is. I turn that text and it now appears out in the bar. Something to think about. You know, I find this useful on sales pages, or again, for clarification, like a footnote style clarification that you find in, you know, typical stuff that you've read in the past. So that was another cool one, throwing the bar in there. I like that. Good for just clarification, that kind of thing. I used to highlight. You can highlight text. I don't know, some people don't know you can do this in Focus. Some people are using the heck out of this feature. So you can take a sentence or some text, select it, and then go down here and say highlight, and boom, it's going to be highlighted. Pretty neat, pretty easy. That's a nice attention-getting element. And now we've got a big video. This video loaded super fast because I'm using the YouTube box, which is a little add-on for Focus that you can buy on DIYthemes.com/add-ons. Anyway, you can buy the YouTube box there. And if I were to include this video with the YouTube box, or just embed a YouTube video at all in my content, it would not appear this wide. It would only be as wide as the content. It would look like this. But when we use an extension, which I showed you earlier, which we use at the top to make the myth versus reality section larger, when we make an extension, now we have a big video. On a page like this, especially when we're using focus mode, where the content is in the middle of the screen, if you're going to have a video, number one, it should be a very high impact video, or else you shouldn't be on the page, because it distracts users and gets people not focused on your content. So if you're going to have a video, it needs to be really high impact and really, you know, it really needs to matter and drive home your point. And if you're going to do that, you might as well make it huge. So I think this is the only way to present a video. This is great. Like, you're definitely seeing this. This is a really sticky element. You're probably clicking on this. And in addition, I've added a caption after the video. And especially if you're going to use an extension and make a big video, you should definitely include a caption. People read captions. This is a great place to add persuasive text. So don't miss this opportunity to, you know, further clarify a point, or to, you know, have an extra persuasive opportunity. Don't miss it. You know, definitely add a caption after any big element like this, image or video.
You just press extension for the big video?
Well, in this case, if you're using the YouTube box, it's a little bit different.
Yes.
I will actually show you how that works for the YouTube box on this page. So let's see, we'll find that thing. Here's the actual code that creates that entire video. So the YouTube box, you get a short code. So you just type YouTube, ID equals the ID of the video, which you can find on YouTube very easily. And then this extra parameter, the YouTube box has quite a few little parameters you can add as options to tweak the output. In this case, the wrap means it puts an HTML wrapper around it. It's kind of nerdy. No one really knows what that is. But you say wrap equals extend, and it will put an extension wrapper around it. And let's see, is that popped as well? I think I automatically pop my videos on this site. So you could also say extend and pop, and it would pop the whole thing. But anyhow, that's how it's done with the YouTube box. By adding that wrap equals extend parameter, it makes the video really big. So that's super handy. Definitely do this especially if you're running focus mode, which I think most people are these days. Here's another block quote. I did a special background on it to make it stand out here, because this is a really hard-hitting quote, but same deal, flexible caption, it just works. I love that. And then we've got another button here at the end. Then I introduce a fact section, frequently asked questions. but this page is getting pretty big. And if this stuff all exists in one WordPress page, it's a nightmare. Like I'd scroll for days. You'd have so many words. It's just not easy to manage a page like that. I don't love that. I don't love having like, 33,000 words on a single page and like scrolling through it. You can't find anything. It's just not great. So what I do for the fact section at the bottom, I actually make this in modular content in a separate place. And then I just include it here at the bottom. So you'll see, here it is. That little bit of code pulls in that entire fact section, which is huge. It's full of a ton of words. All right. So now we're going to go look at how I construct the modular content over here. And so modular content is a very interesting feature you get with Focus. And I probably don't talk about it enough. It's really an interesting way to handle all the content that matters to you that's not a poster page on your WordPress website. So an example of something that is not a poster page is an email opt-in form. Maybe you have an email provider and you're building an email list. The code itself for your email opt-in form is important content to you, but it's not a poster page. It's also something you probably want to appear in multiple places on your website. It'd be nice to say, hey, let's put an opt-in form here. Hey, let's put one here. Modular content is the most efficient way for you to do something like that. I used it for the facts section, like I said, because I didn't want to have the facts kind of messy. It's got its own special HTML markup, which I'm going to show you here. And you'll see why. Look at this. This is cryptic looking. Like this is a big, not great. That's a lot. I don't want all that in the body of my post, my focus sales page. So I stuff it all over here in the modular content where it's all quarantined and I can kind of examine this within this context. Like, I don't know, I like compartmentalizing things like that. And so I stick all that stuff in here. So that way, when I want to change the content for the fact, I just go into this modular content and edit it separate from my sales page. You may find that there are certain things on your site that you want to handle in a similar manner. Totally a preferential thing. But another benefit to this is that if you created content in a post or page, WordPress will automatically turn that into a URL endpoint on the internet. So it'd be like yoursite.com/whatever page. I would not want that for my FAQ over here. That would be ridiculous to have DIYthemes.com/focus-FAQ and have it pull up this information. That would be, it's an unnecessary signal to send to search engines. This content should not exist in that manner. It's creating a duplicate content concern. It's bad for your site. You don't want this to happen. So indeed, in any case where you don't want a URL for your content, if you want the content to exist on your site and be usable, but not to exist as its own web page, then you want to use modular content to handle it. So here it is. So let's go see that sales page again. And within the modular content, within the fact modular content, I do similar stuff. I use a highlight. I deployed a button. I've got another video that's extended. I've got a caption. I've got an alert call out for focus. And I've got another one at the end. This is outside the fact, actually. I was kind of clever about the way I did this. But the bottom line is I'm using all these tools and combining them, but making sure that all of my editing environments are as simple as possible, as quarantined as possible, as straightforward as possible. And this is the kind of stuff that I encourage you to try to do as well. Use the features. If you find yourself venturing outside of that, trying to do these custom things, I want you to think of that as a trigger and think, wait a minute, maybe there's a way I can use what I already have to get the outcomes I want without resorting to these extreme measures. If you feel like that's the case, but you don't know what you should be doing instead, please come into the DIY Themes forums and ask me. I love clarifying these kinds of things for people. I love helping people figure out the best way to do whatever it is they want to do. So don't hesitate to ask those kinds of questions. Those are not bad questions. Those are not embarrassing questions. It's actually quite difficult to get the clarity to know, okay, this is the best way to proceed because this produces the least amount of waste. This is going to be efficient for me in the future. These are not easy questions to answer. So don't be embarrassed to ask those questions. Those are great questions. So there it is. That's my revamped focus sales page. It's focused on the customer. It uses simple elements. It keeps things visually interesting. As you roll down the page, there's, color differences in the backgrounds to keep you refocus attention. That's another concept that I'm kind of starting to latch onto here recently, and something I want to use more effectively is refocusing attention as people go down the page. It's not good enough just to get people at the top. You have to do things to keep people's attention on pages that sell, at least, or that have a goal.
The image in the video, you can change it on YouTube, or how you change the image that shows the video?
So that's a great question. So what I do is I create a custom thumbnail and I upload it to YouTube for each image. And the good news here is 2 years ago, YouTube had an issue where that didn't really work very well, and you were better off uploading the custom thumbnail to your own WordPress website and then telling the YouTube box to use a custom thumbnail. But fortunately, YouTube has fixed their custom thumbnail functionality, and it's working the right way. So you just do all this stuff within YouTube, upload your custom thumbnail, and it will pull, the YouTube box will pull this thing exactly the way you want. It's worth noting that if you do a video, if you create a video, you also should think as part of your creation process that you have to create an image like this. Your video will never reach its potential without a custom thumbnail. That's just the facts, the way YouTube works, and the way content suggestions, like, when you're watching a YouTube video, you got those suggested videos over in the sidebar. The ones with the best thumbnails are going to win. That's how this stuff works. So if you're committed to creating videos, you also need to be committed to creating thumbnails to promote those videos. But yeah, so to answer your question, I created the thumbnail image. I uploaded it to YouTube under, when I'm editing my video, I upload that, and then this is what shows. That's a good question. So there's that. Anyone have any questions about that? Any of the stuff I did on this page? Anything you see, you're like, I didn't know you could do that.
What color is it? The previous one? Yes, that one.
This one's orange.
Orange.
This one is, I think, pink, but maybe not. Might be louder. It's pink. First one was orange, pink, and then this one is blue. And you can always go to the focus docs and go into the full width bleed documentation page. And at the bottom, I've got all the colors, and you can tell this is what you enter when you're creating your bleed. So it's very clear, and you can see examples of all the what all the colors are going to be. And like I said, whenever you use these bleeds, whenever you deploy special elements within them, block quotes, captions, bars, things like that, they will be color coordinated to go with whatever background color you've selected, which is totally cool. And there's also some other interesting adaptations that happen. So like when you have a bleed section, and the first thing in your bleed is an H2 element, Focus goes ahead and does custom spacing that's different from if you just had a naked H2 element in a stream of text. It would look and behave a little differently than this one does, because Focus looks at this and says, hey, this is an introduction to a bleed section. We're going to handle this a little bit differently. We realize this is contextually different. The same thing happens here. After you have a full width bleed section, Focus puts a little bit more spacing in here, because you actually need a little bit of extra breathing room for this type of context. These are just little tweaks that no one would ever think about, but these are all built into Focus. So we got a question over here. Let's go. Daniel, you got a question? I can't hear you. Hang on. You got to unmute.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay. All right. So do we need to do the bleed on a section like you're talking about here? Do we need to do that in a content modular box?
No. Actually, you can do bleeds wherever you want. I'll show you how I did this one.
Okay.
So with this one, the first section at the top's got that myth versus reality. And then immediately after it, I just say, I use the opening bleed tag, bleed style equals whatever. The SEP is something it's custom on DIY themes. It puts a little border on the bottom of it. But so this is all you need to focus on. Bleed style equals orange. And then everything that appears in the bleed is in here. And when the bleed is supposed to end, I put a closing bleed tag that defines the top and the bottom of any particular bleed section. So that's how you do it.
So just put those opening and closing bleed tags before your content, and then, okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, and I'll do it within the context of the visual editor once, just to illustrate how this is. So it might have something like this. So if you like to use the visual editor, you do this. You go up, we'll say bleed, style equals salmon. Actually make this a paragraph size. There's some issues with this. So that'd be up there, and then underneath we would have it down here. Close our bleed. This is exactly how it looks. There's some space in there. This is just how the editor works. No big deal. We're going to hit update, and we're going to look at it. And there it is. So super easy to do that. And like I said, depending on like what is in your bleed, like if the first element's an H2, Focus does all these custom spacing adjustments. You can even, there's even more stuff like that. Like Focus picks up on all these little details that you might change. So for example, let's say we'll turn this into a heading 2, and then we'll put then inspiring clarification text. And we're going to turn this into a caption, and we'll check out how the bleed is now. All right, so it set this up as the headline to start the bleed, and then after it, it's got some, it's got this inline flexible caption. And there actually, there's a bug here. You might have noticed this is supposed to be centered. In the next version of Focus, this will be centered. There's a little update. I've got some little contextual tweaks I still need to make. But bottom line, there's a lot going on there. If you do this kind of thing, Focus is saying, okay, this needs to be treated this way. This headline needs to be like this. But you don't have to think about any of it. You just make your bleed. You put your little sub headline in there. You maybe do this if you want. And boom, you get the outcomes you want. I'm going to show why would you do something like this? You might think, well, why would I want a caption after a headline? I'll show you an example of where I use it, and you might like it. So here in the Focus documentation, I have different sections, and I use these flexible captions to tell you what you can expect to find in this section. I think it's pretty handy. You know, use native Focus options and features to build highly customized websites. Okay, fair enough. Advanced customizations involve the use of more than just basic Focus options. So just clarification text, this kind of thing is nice to do. It's cool that you can do this with Focus, and it's all built in there. And if you set it up this way, Focus understands what you're doing and gives you the result you want. So there's tons of stuff like that. I try to always drop little nuggets like that in any of my videos. I try to illustrate, like, here's how to do this, here's how to do that, just little things. There's not some comprehensive place you can go where I'm going to show you 150 things you could do. Just in all the videos, I'm always trying to drop nuggets like that. So you're constantly getting enriched with things you can do and different ways to do things, so you don't feel like you're just in this monotonous presentation. It's really easy to get into a rut like that. Like this page, I don't use any bleeds. It's kind of basic. I am using subheadlines, flexible captions, heading 4 tags to introduce lists. I mean, I'm doing some fancy stuff, but the page is still pretty bland, right? It's when we get to the use of bleeds and extensions. This is when things get interesting. And throwing buttons in there, you know, you guys get it. Anyway, anything else? Anybody see anything that I've done? You're like, hey, wait a minute, how do you do that? Or anything like that?
One of the questions that was pretty popular in your forum in the past few years is about what plugins do you recommend? And you said the less, the better. So I do run WordFence because, you know, security. But anyway, what do you think about plugins?
Yeah. Well, let's look at what I'm running on DIYthemes.com. It's a lot more than people will probably imagine. So I've got affiliate WP. All these things are to run an affiliate program for Focus. So that's something that downstream from e-commerce, you might have e-commerce, and if you have e-commerce, you might have affiliate stuff. So this is way down the rabbit hole there. So I've got affiliate stuff. I run the Classic Editor plugin. This is number one. If you're going to run one plugin, this is it. Run the Classic Editor plugin. Do not use Gutenberg. Here's why. Number one, Gutenberg is clunky and produces outcomes that can be very funky and unwanted. The clunkiness, I can't tolerate that. I hate that. Number two, Gutenberg puts, it's called Cruft. Cruft is HTML markup that you don't see, but that exists like behind your pages, so to speak, and it makes your pages larger than they need to be. That Cruft exists to tell Gutenberg what to do. And the problem is that Cruft all exists in your database. So you don't see it on your pages when it outputs. You do see it in HTML source if you look at that, but nobody does that. But you don't see this in your pages, but it is there, and it's making your database bigger all the time. But that's not really the issue. The issue is that if you ever wanted to move your site off of WordPress in the future, let's say you want to port your content somewhere else, then that process is going to be much more expensive and much harder than it would be otherwise, because you're going to have to remove all of that markup Cruft from Gutenberg. And if you've created something like 200-300 pages or more with Gutenberg, that is now a mountain of work, a mountain of work. I've messed with some programmatic ways of removing that Cruft, and it's not bulletproof. There's some gotcha type situations and some things that make it so there's probably going to be unintended outcomes if you do that. And so I have other reasons why I dislike Gutenberg from a computer science standpoint that are not really fit for public consumption. But the bottom line is there's enough things, enough vectors within Gutenberg that says, this is not right, this is not right, this looks bad, I don't like this, that I cannot recommend using it at all. And in fact, all I can say is use the Classic Editor plugin and don't even think that Gutenberg exists. It's just it's a red herring. It's a plot convention. It's going to send you down the wrong path. It's going to create headaches for you in the future, guaranteed. Another thing you might ask and say, well, Chris, why would I ever move off WordPress in the future? I would advise you to say, this is internet. Things change all the time. Things you think may never change may indeed change. Elon Musk owns Twitter now. Who saw that coming 2-3 years ago? I'm just saying, things that you think may never change are indeed going to change. And you want to make sure you're prepared and not painted into a corner when those things change. So I've always got my eye on that ball in the future. I'm looking out for you. I want you to look out for you too, though. I can't help you unless you also help you. So there we go. Classic Editor, #1 best plugin of all time. Code Prettify, I use this because I include code snippets in my documentation, and I want the code snippets to be syntax highlighted for clarity. You're probably not going to do this. You don't need that. To run my e-commerce functionality on DIYthemes.com, I have the Easy Digital Downloads plugin. This is a leviathan of a plugin. It is a big deal to integrate or to use something like this on your site and to integrate it for a store. This is not for the faint of heart. This is a $25,000 job, basically, to do this on DIYthemes.com. So I've got all these plugins that are associated with it that help me run my store. But the gotcha here is I have to install these. You wouldn't believe the amount of custom code work I had to do to get all this to work the way it needs to work for DIY themes. Total nightmare. Total nightmare. But that's e-commerce. And WooCommerce would have been even worse and would have made my site slower. All right, now we're getting to another good plugin. Google XML Sitemaps. This is a great one. I absolutely recommend you use Google XML Sitemaps. If you use this, though, you must also use something in the Focus ecosystem called the Cleanup WP box. So the reason you have to use the Cleanup WP box if you also use the Google XML Sitemaps plugin is because WordPress introduced its own sitemap functionality about 1.5 years ago. But the problem with it is that it sucks. And so if you have 2 sitemaps being sent to search engines, Google, for example, won't know which one is superior, and it will just look at them both. And the WordPress one contains a lot of data that you probably don't want your sitemap to include. And so for me, for example, I want absolute control over the content on my site that gets submitted to search engines. I do this with the XML Sitemaps plugin. That's really well done. It's super robust, very granular and detailed. The WP sitemap is newer, Like the Google XML Sitemaps plugin is like 11 years old or something. Like this dude has been doing this thing for a long time. It's like me running Focus. Like you can trust me. I've done this forever. I've solved a zillion problems along the way. But you get buy some new fancy thing that just was launched yesterday by someone you've never heard of, it's going to be crap comparatively, even if it looks like it's fancy or whatever. That's the case with this sitemap thing. So I use the cleanup WP box. I make sure the WP sitemap is not enabled. And then I use that Google XML Sitemaps plugin to handle my sitemaps. So I definitely recommend you use the cleanup WP box, and I definitely recommend you don't use the automatic WP sitemap. Next, I use a plugin called Mailgun. And you may not use Mailgun, but you probably should use a plugin similar to it. There's one from SendGrid. There's Mailgun. There's probably a slew of others I don't know anything about. These are called SMTP plugins. What this is a way, so your WordPress website sends you email. You may have noticed, you get a comment, you might get a notification about that comment. And if you have, like me, like an e-commerce site with a lot of customers, my customers are also going to get emails from the WordPress website, depending on actions that have taken place. Like maybe you've bought Focus, for example. The more emails your website sends, the less likely it is those emails will actually be received. There's a lot of reasons for this. Email on the internet is probably the most serious issue on the internet today. And basically, it's a closed door system. If you were king, your emails would be allowed to go through. But you and me, we are not king. We are peasants. Our emails are not allowed to go through. So we have to partner with somebody like Mailgun or SendGrid, who have been anointed as kings of email. And emails sent through their protocols will be delivered at a higher percentage than your peasant emails would be otherwise. So we have to do this if we care about email deliverability from our sites. I absolutely do. It's critical for me and my business. So I have to use an SMTP provider plugin. I use Mailgun. I pay a nominal fee every month with them, and it's like under $4. But it's worth it to know that my email is getting through. If you buy Focus, you get a product receipt email, and then it tells you all the stuff you got to do next, like go here for the docs, go here to set up your WordPress website. Here's a Focus installation video. Like if a customer doesn't receive that, that's a problem for me. So I use Mailgun to make sure they do. Manage notification emails. This is interesting. If you run an e-commerce website, you may want this. WordPress sends all sorts of notifications about all sorts of things. If you change your password, it will say, hey, you just changed your password. If you change other various things, it may say, hey, you just did this. I use this manage notification emails to make sure WordPress is only sending the most critical stuff. I don't want any unnecessary emails going to my customers at all. I hate getting emails, especially non sequitur ones that are not relevant to me. So I use this to make sure that does not happen for you guys. Another one that I don't use, what most people would consider a classic security plugin, such as Daniel mentioned WordPress, WordFence. Another one is called Securi. There's a bunch more out there. I don't use these. I hate these. They slow down your WordPress admin. I cannot tolerate hits and speed at all. So I use something called WP Fail to Ban, which checks brute force login attempts and other ways, attempts to get into your WordPress site, and just starts knocking off IP addresses. And basically, it's sort of like the security plugins, but it only does the stuff that is really mission critical for security. Like, you know, the stuff that matters is really a small subset of the functionality these security plugins provide. And WP Fail to Ban sticks to the stuff I need without introducing performance affecting things. And then WP Discourse is the last one I use. And I use that to tie in my Discourse forums, the DIY themed forums. So again, if you don't have it, so really, if we look at the ones we truly need that I recommend, Classic Editor, Google XML Sitemaps, some sort of SMTP provider, but you may not need this if your site is small and you're not going to be signing anybody up on your site. And you may want managed notification emails. Again, if it's only you running the site, you may not need that. And then something like WP Fail to Ban is probably smart to include as well. Okay, so I am recording this thing. They're coming up on the time limit. So I got time for one more question if anybody has one. If not, we can wrap this up.
I have one, please.
All right,
Is it possible, or first, is it recommended to click on the social media buttons and open in another tab, another window?
I see what you're saying. So I never do open in another window anymore. I used to. This used to be a people thought it was a way to like not have attention go away from your page. Like as if people would come back to this tab and revisit and pick up right where they left off. We learned they don't really do that. Number two, opening links in new tabs end up being a vulnerability for cross-site injections and other types of hacking that can occur. And so if you do that, you then had to take a precaution as well, using something called the rel no opener, no refer tag, which you would need to add in manually, which is kind of nerdy and a little bit technical. So that doesn't look too good to users. And so when that started happening, when this tab nabbing thing became a thing, I decided after reviewing all the materials I could that opening links in new tab like that was never something you should do anymore. The reason why is people are power users now. Anyone who's going to open a link in a new tab is going to do it anyway. I'm going to say right click, open link in new tab. This is what I do. Like if you think about your own usage, you're probably like, yeah, I'm a professional. I just do this all the time. I don't even think about it. So I know the stuff I want to open in a new tab and I know the stuff I don't. So there's very, very rarely, if ever, a reason to open a new tab. So I don't do that because number one, it shuts down the possibility of me getting hacked through cross-site injection and through some of these tab nabbing procedures that are out there. So hacking vulnerability, number one, I don't really need another reason. But number two, catering to power users' behavior, people are already opening a new tab. That's what they want to do. So there's really no reason to do that. So I don't recommend it at all anymore. But if you do, you're going to have to do this. Let's see. Here's the A link. You've got to add to your links. Rel equals no opener, no refer. And it also, to open in a new window, you would also have the target equals blank directive. That would cause it to open in a new window. Let's see if it'll do it. Yeah. So now it is open that link in a new window. But if you don't include the no opener, no refer thing, you're vulnerable to those hacks. So again, like I said, considering all that stuff and all the stuff you have to do and the way power users work, forget it. No more opening links in new tab. That's my recommendation. But if you're going to do it, I showed you what you got to do.
Thank you.
All right, cool, guys. So I'm going to be doing office hours probably the week after Christmas or maybe 2 weeks after Christmas, something like that. We'll be picking this back up again. I'm going to be looking for some more informative topics. What I'd like to do is have like 15 minutes of something I could teach you guys, something that I think is going to be useful, and then I can address you guys' questions. So moving forward, I'm hoping for a little bit more of a solidified format. I just want this to be useful for you guys, and you guys feel like you're learning how to use focus and get the most out of it all the time. And so, but I welcome any and all questions you have. I love the questions you guys brought today, and we'll keep it going. All right. And I'll, when this recording is available, I'll post it in the forums. But appreciate all of you who showed up. Thank you all so much. And you stuck through to the end, so I appreciate that too, okay? Appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the forums. See you at the next one too. All right, bye.